Kathy, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Gatz, the Central Elementary School principal, for our welcome and kickoff.
I think this has become an annual thing when I go first to start the year. I was here September 11th.
We almost got out of it, and then we switched it on you. So.
Yeah, that's all right, you know. But things are off to a great start this year. I think, you know, I spoke with my colleagues this week, and we're all excited about how the year has gotten underway. A little warmer than usual for the first couple of weeks, but we've adjusted pretty well to make the environment as best we can for students and staff. We're busy building relationships and foundations for classroom communities at this time, and that's really a lot of what the teachers spend the first few weeks on to get things going. We're working towards building our parent relationships tomorrow evening at the elementary schools, because it is fall parent night tomorrow night, so we're hoping to see as many parents and guardians as possible here to hear about what their students are going to be learning this year directly from the teachers. And we're currently in all schools completing fall data collection for students for baselines for their learning levels, so that we can help teachers just planning for instruction and determining which students might need some additional supports to start to the year as we get things underway. And at Central, our big fall event is coming up at the end of the month. We have our Fall Family Fun Night that we've had for many years, and we're looking forward to having as many Central families there as possible. So we're excited. It's been a great start to the year, and thanks again for all your support.
Thank you. All right.
And Pete's gonna leave because he's also gonna be here tomorrow night.
Okay. All right. We won't hold against you. Well, we've got a long way to go. Okay, so moving on to the next item. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda that anybody recommends? No? Okay. We will move into committee reports, and first up is Education Committee.
We're gonna start out, I am sad that I missed this at the Teacher Institute. So we're gonna start with the strategic plan video.
Yeah. So we'll take 8 minutes and watch it, for those of you that haven't had an opportunity yet.
Get closer to you, Joel.
You can get closer. I promise.
It's cute. And we learn a lot.
There's always something that you're going to find new in any of your classes.
And then there's also so many clubs that you can join. Like, I can't even name them all. There's so many.
It really has been an awesome experience being here at D96. I wake up and I'm happy every day to come here, to hang out with my students. I find pure joy in being here.
Just like they grow at home, they come to school to grow.
And become wonderful humans, so it's really cool to see.
Hi, I'm Martha. I'm the superintendent here at Riverside District 96. It is truly a great honor and privilege to be the superintendent here. We are in year 2 of a 5-year strategic plan. I think it's really going well. Most districts probably have a strategic plan or some guiding principles and guiding goals. We're very, very committed, and we stay very committed to living the plan. At Riverside District 96, it's more than just test scores. It's what do you know, what are you learning, and how can we help you grow?
We're looking at the whole child and looking at from where they start at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of their time in Riverside District 96 to where they continue to grow to.
We try to make math applicable to the real world so that kids can see why what they're learning is important and how they might carry it with them.
Every student is an individual, and we want to make sure that what we're teaching, whether it's academics or social emotional, that what we're teaching meets the individual needs of students.
Everyone is really nice and helpful.
Like in ELA, my ELA teacher helped me bring my grade up.
The work can get hard sometimes, but once you work hard, it just feels that much better once you've done it.
Welcome to Screen Cap.
We take pride in preparing our students for the next stage of their education.
Our curriculums and the RB curriculum were they're all transitioning right into each other. What we're doing now is setting us up for success later on.
As a senior now, I've taken every math course that they provide to the highest level. I'm in Calc BC right now, so I'm just really proud of that, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without Hudson.
A successful first year of full-day kindergarten means we're able to devote more time to the needs of our youngest learners.
We're able to now differentiate instruction more than ever. We're able to meet students in small groups.
Just the fact that we get a little bit more time with the kiddos to kind of dive into deeper concepts and have more time for small groups and play-based learning, it's just been amazing.
When we do equations, we can tell stories to the whole class, and then that makes it fun.
They can't wait for every single day, and if that attitude, that flavor can then go beyond to first grade to second, it will make their life have a flavor of, I love learning, I can learn.
We're here to cultivate a safe, secure, and inclusive learning environment.
Social emotional learning is really the skills that students need throughout their entire school day and throughout their entire life. It helps students make good decisions, think about others' perspectives, learn that it's important to take risks and that it's okay to make mistakes.
So social emotional learning is really integrated in every single thing we do, even if it is a math lesson.
My room serves as sort of a therapy for students. It's a safe environment for the students. We have music playing for them.
The reason we're here in the mornings is to help kids begin their day regulated.
By focusing on character traits like optimism, teamwork, and empathy, students don't just learn the meaning, they live it.
If you do stuff for other people that are really nice, it can make you feel good, it can make other people feel good. Once you practice it more and more, it'll be more of a habit, and it'll help us become a better person overall when we grow up.
District 96 is addressing opportunity gaps and taking a culturally responsive approach to learning. When we start looking at the curriculum, we want to make sure that all students are represented, that all students are able to see themselves in the materials that we're utilizing.
The uniqueness that every student brings to the table really helps make good citizens that are more open-minded and are willing to take chances.
That's like very helpful if you learn like multiple languages.
Our teachers and staff encourage creativity, participation, and student ownership of their learning.
It's so amazing to see that the students are coming up with ideas that the teachers will say, I would love to run that. Like, if that's an interest, yes.
Best buddies, it's just really fun, I gotta admit.
When I got into 8th grade, I joined the robotics team.
You are gonna find your people no matter what.
Recruiting, developing, and retaining exceptional personnel for all positions remains a top priority.
This year we've really focused on looking at what is that first year experience for a new hire, because that's critical. At the same time, we're looking at, well, what is the experience of our current employees?
When we think about our instructional coaches, they're there for meeting teachers' various needs. It's something that we ask teachers, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do with the coaches?
We are trying to ensure that we're attracting candidates that are coming from a wide variety of backgrounds.
And making sure that our interviews are unbiased and that are really inclusive and inviting all candidates to come forward.
¿Están lista para la lección del día de hoy? It's also important for the students in our school districts to see that there are educators that they can relate to and that they just look the same way as that they do.
By building a strong support system with our families and partners, District 96 can better meet the needs of all students. We want to have trust with our families, we want to have high-quality relationships with our families.
I would say to a new parent, come in, enjoy the ride, get involved. The more you put in, the more you're going to get out, and enjoy it. It's a great district that fully embraces you when you come in.
We believe through trusted relationships, what we ultimately get are our staff feeling more capable and more confident in terms of their educating somebody else's child, right? And also for our families to feel that same sense of confidence and capability in terms of being a great partner and being able to support their child's education at home.
I just feel like they're open to new ideas and suggestions.
And we're making effective, efficient, and equitable use of tax dollars for improved student achievement.
Well, we want to get the best possible student outcomes, but be responsible with the community's resources.
Making sure that we're clear on the money that's coming in and the money that's going out, and when we have an opportunity to have a surplus, be able to say like, and what else should we be doing for children?
They could make these decisions without all of our input, but they're taking such great lengths to make sure every voice is heard. And to me, that's good stewardship of money.
Teachers are here for the students to make sure that those students strive and succeed and be the best that they can be.
I couldn't have anticipated a better flow and a better ability of the kiddos to be able to really step up and say, okay, I have this, I can do this full day.
I enjoy seeing the light shine in a child's eye when they share what they're learning. I enjoy seeing the collaboration of students when they're working together in class.
I have a whole community behind me, and I feel when I come here in the mornings, I'm waving to families on my way in, it's just such a nice community to be a part of.
The kids really make coming to work an amazing thing every single day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Marla.
That's
Put it
great.
all together yourself?
Who? Me?
Yeah,
Oh,
you.
yeah. No. All right. So I actually met with Martha and Angela and Nora a couple weeks ago. And we talked about a whole bunch of things. So I think the next thing is we're going to start, sorry, at strategic plan goals 1 and 2 updates. Who's doing that?
So the whole bunch of things that Marlo talked with Nora and Angela about, they're going to share with all of you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Nora and I are here to update you on goals 1 and 2 of our strategic plan. And there's overlap between the two, so tonight we are sharing the table. So I'm going to start. And looking at student growth and achievement, the goal of student growth and achievement, ensuring high levels of learning for all students. Things that have been happening since we've last talked about goal 1 include our elementary English language arts curricular review will start on Tuesday, September 12th. The team's been picked. We have 2 representatives from every grade level, kindergarten through 5th grade. We have an English language learner teacher on the team, a special education teacher. We also have a principal, one of the elementary principals, Kim Hefner, is on the team. And as you know, we'll be working with Margot Sikeli from CEC on this process. At our first meeting, we're going to talk about the rubric we'll be utilizing when we look at the different curricular resources. We'll be talking about our goals and timeline. And then we'll also start digging into some of the resources that Margot and I have we've previewed already, based off of certain criteria, including rigorous instruction, ratings on ed reports, as well as what we've learned from other districts. Our summer school satisfaction survey went out to families on Thursday, August 17th. In that survey, we found that, well, first, 33% of our responses represented our primary students, the 1st and 2nd grade students. 39% of the responses represented our intermediate families, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And then 48% of the responses represented middle school students. And the reason why it doesn't add up to 100 is because one family might have had students in different areas, so they were able to select multiple ranges. Of those that responded, the survey responses focused on the skill building classes, Transition to Hauser, Drama and Improv, Taste of Technology, We Video, Leadership Academy, Chicago Comes Alive, Intro to Programming, Robotics, Coding, and How It's Made, and Power Up. 17 of the respondents shared that their students love their skill building and enrichment classes, and a couple of them even used the word fun with the skill building and enrichment classes. A couple of responses did mention that the skill building courses were great refreshers for their students as they prepared to start school a couple of weeks later. And then there were a couple of responses that did mention a desire for more social engagement in Transition to Hauser. Right now, Transition to Hauser is very much like the technical part of coming to the junior high. How do you do the locker with the combination lock? How do you get from your class, get around to your classes? I can't remember if they get a make-believe schedule or they get their actual schedule. I think it might be their actual schedule so that they can practice getting to their classes since they're the incoming 6th graders. But a few parents did say that they would have liked it to have more of a social aspect so that the kids could try to get to know each other and make some new friends as well. And so that's something that Kim Hefner and I will be talking about and working on and seeing how we can incorporate that into the program as well. Long-range professional learning, just so you as a board are aware of the professional learning that we're doing. New teacher mentoring is a piece of professional learning. We had new teacher mentoring on August 15th through Thursday, August 17th. We have 14 new teachers who met to learn about Riverside School District 96. We We talked about building relationships in classrooms, establishing a safe, secure, and inclusive learning environment. They also learned about Schoology and Seesaw and all those technical pieces, as well as did a lot of curriculum planning and work with their mentors and department colleagues. They're going to meet with Sarah Hickey, our teacher leader for mentoring, throughout the whole year. They meet once a month with Sarah, and they cover topics like the spring open house or parent-teacher conferences, evaluations, all those things that even if you're an experienced teacher, you're going to want to know how it works in Riverside District 96. Our elementary staff members are continuing their professional learning with iReady Mathematics, with the iReady Mathematics curriculum, and that includes our kindergarten and first grade teachers just had a half-day training each on the new textbook, the new book series that iReady updated. iReady, with their most recent update, just completely revamped the kindergarten and first grade curriculum so that it's more hands-on, more play-based, more game-like for learning math so that it's more interactive and probably less book work that they had in the last series. And then our empowered teams work will be starting. That's our professional learning focus for 75-minute professional learning sessions that we'll have. 6 of the 8 professional learning sessions will focus on empowered teams, which is very much like a professional learning community. We're going to focus this year on how and why we collaborate as teams, as well as once we understand why we're collaborating as a team and why we have this common collaboration time, then we're going to focus on our students' learning and working on understanding how our students learn. Next year, this is a 2-year process. Next year, we'll talk about looking at student results and how we use those results then to drive instruction. So that's our empowered teams work. The first year is on collaboration and focusing on learning. We will be focusing on results, just not in that empowered teams form. We still talk about how students are doing on assessments. We still talk about how our students are performing in class. It's just that we'll do more focused work with that next year. Also with professional learning this year, our district leadership team will be starting tomorrow with our equity work as a leadership team. We're going to meet 5 times starting next Wednesday. I'm sorry, not tomorrow. I'm totally off. Starting next Wednesday with Yvette Dubiel, who will be leading these sessions to help our team better understand the major categories and complexities of biases and their impacts on education. And then we continue our professional learning with social emotional learning as well. We will focus the other 2 of the 8 75-minute professional learning sessions on social emotional learning. We'll have other opportunities where we'll continue our staff members' professional learning in this area. And one of those such opportunities was at our opening Institute Day, where we had a special guest speaker on that day, and I'm going to turn it over to Nora for that.
All right, so moving into Learning Environment and Culture Goal 2. As Angela said, our opening day was really focused on the importance of creating a supportive and welcoming learning environment and building that community in your classroom. Teachers had the opportunity, our K-5 teachers had the opportunity to learn their new Tier 1 curriculum, and the junior high spent time talking about the SEL standards and how they are incorporating that into their daily instruction. And excuse me, Dr. Doug Bolton gave the keynote address that was really, to the entire district and some of you, really focused on the research behind kids who have a connection to school and why that can be so important and so helpful for students even who have experienced a lot of trauma in their life, that having even one connection in a school building can make such a difference in, yes, their test scores, but also their long-term outcomes. On that same note of SEL, the SEL Action Team will have our first meeting 2 weeks from now on September 19th. We have 5 new staff members who expressed interest at the end of last year in joining our team. So we'll have 28 staff members representing all 5 district buildings. And at that meeting, we will be identifying our goals for the year. We all have, there are any number of things we can be working on. We'll make sure that we are setting reasonable goals for the team for the year to achieve and to help bring some of these ideas more into the work that they're doing with their colleagues day to day as well as start planning for the 2 SEL-focused professional learning sessions that Angela mentioned. The PASS screener, or the pupils' attitudes towards self and school, will be administered again in the first 2 weeks of October for all students 2nd grade through 8th grade. And then the social workers and psychologists and myself will meet with the consultant from PASS the week after that assessment window closes to learn more about the how to make the best use of the data, and then also how to make the best use of the class and school interventions that PASS as part of its programming. They have a database of interventions and suggestions of, if you see this pattern in your data, here's something you might want to look at, and here's something you could try in this classroom if that's where the pattern is, or this grade level if that's where the pattern is. So I know our school mental health professionals are really excited to have that time with the PASS representative and to really take a deeper dive into that data. And then just as an ongoing update, we've talked before about the responsive classroom training and how that's a pretty big investment of time for teachers over the summer. It's 5 full days. This past summer we had 13 District 96 staff opt to attend those days of training, which brings our total to 35 across the district who have completed the whole training, and then 6 who have gone on to do advanced training in that framework as well. And that's it. Any questions? Anything we can help with?
I think just some feedback that I received from the community this year going into summer school was that particularly this was focused on our youngest students, so ages 1st through 3rd maybe, or years 1st through 3rd, was that the curriculum or the offerings weren't sort of as robust as they maybe had hoped around what we were offering, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I don't even know if this is faulty reporting, but that some of the programs focused more so on movement than they did like math or reading skill building. I'm just curious, is that true? Maybe over time, how has that sort of developed, and why, if that is true, do we focus more so on movement at the younger ages? And just thoughts, and maybe this is a larger discussion that we have at a different time or have more information brought to us, but just understanding how we're utilizing summer school to tie back into our student growth and achievement goals, and making sure that we're using that opportunity to the best we can.
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts.
Good.
I'll start with, yes, it is true. It's not faulty reporting. We did have fewer numbers of offerings for kindergarten through 3rd grade, kindergarten through 2nd grade this year than we have in previous years. So since 2019, the summer of 2019, so right before the pandemic summer, we had, that was the year that we had the most offerings for our primary students. We had 6 courses at kindergarten first offered, 7 at 2nd, and 8 at 3rd. And then over time, that 6, and 7 have decreased to the summers of no kindergarten offerings, 1 at 1st grade and 1 at 2nd grade, and 3 at 3rd grade. So it's definitely true reporting. The one class that was offered for our 1st and 2nd graders was Power Up, and it was a physical activity movement. And it wasn't really based on a philosophy that that's more important than reading or math or an academic base. It was, we extend an invitation to all of our teachers and our parent professionals also, just pretty much all of our staff members, on, do you want to teach summer school this year, or do you want to be involved in summer school? Do you want to teach a class? Do you want to be an aide in a class? Do you want to be secretary for summer school? How would you like to be involved? And this year we, and when they fill out that invitation, it's a Google form, and they say, I want to help with skill building classes, or I want to do this type of class, and they come up with, the teachers who want to teach summer school come up with the class that they want to teach. So in the past, for primary students, it's been things like a Tommy DiPaolo book study, or Patricia Polacco book study, or All About Sharks, or Transition to Kindergarten. So it's based off of teacher interest and what teachers want to put together. And this year, when we extended the invitation, we had one teacher who said, yes, I want to do primary classes, and this is what I'm interested in doing. And so they did a Power Up class. Had we had any other teachers that said, yes, I want to do this book study, or I want to do this cooking class, we've had a cooking class before, then we would have said, great. And I know Ms. Hefner, when she sees how things are falling out, she'll extend another invitation. We're really short on this type of class, or teachers for skill building, or this grade level. And we try to recruit more of our staff members, but for this summer, we just didn't get any bites at the primary level. So we did have fewer staff members, fewer offerings for this past summer. I will say we also had fewer offerings at 4th and 5th grade as well this summer. They had 6 offerings compared to numbers as high as 10 or 12, 14, 13 offerings in previous years. So this summer seemed to be a little bit more slim in our offerings. It was the lowest year for kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 4th and 5th, and then it was right in the middle for the other grade levels. We continue to talk about how do we recruit teachers? Is it because of burnout? Is it because of life and family circumstances? Is it because of, I know I have some of my teachers are taking grad school classes, and so they've pulled back on many of the things they're doing so that they can focus on their grad school. Some of our teachers also have started new families, and so they pull back on what they're doing in the summer to spend time with families and children. So we continue to have a discussion at the cabinet level, as well as Ms. Hefner and I, about why we might not have as many teachers accepting an invitation to teach summer school. And we also, Martha and I, continue to talk about how can we continue to make summer school meaningful? Is it meaningful to our families? What are the things that would be more meaningful? And I do really appreciate the focus, like you bringing up the focus on our strategic plan goals of high achievement and learning for our students. And that's something that we do ask when they put together their classes. We do ask, how is it related to the district goals as well, so that we are seeing that. So those book studies are related to reading skills and reading enjoyment. And we have had a math club 1 year for our 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade classes. So we ask them to relate it to our goals. We do look for that as well. So that's one way we address the strategic plan. But if we don't have the people, then they're not offering classes related to goals at the moment. Another thing that I continue to think about, and we'll talk more about at cabinet, is are we at a point where we need to reach out to partner with other companies, other people who might provide activities for us, for our students during those 4 summer weeks. So it's a continuing, evolving process, and something that we continue to discuss and look at. And if you have other ideas or thoughts, would love for you to share them with Martha so that we can continue to have incorporate those into our conversations.
Would it be helpful to get more community feedback? Do you get much community feedback of what they would like to see offered versus the teachers trying to create content?
I don't know that, like the survey says, is there anything else we should know or anything else that would help make this experience more enjoyable? I don't know that we've said in the survey, like, what would you like to see offered?
The summer school survey? The summer, specifically in this.
The summer satisfaction survey.
Even bigger than that. Like,
yeah.
Would other people, like if I don't know if anybody had feedback of like, I would have loved my 1st grader to do this thing and just get an idea on the table that maybe teachers could be like, oh, I'd be interested in that. So I know there's a lot of different things to balance, but like, would it be helpful if there was more broader community feedback on what they would like to see, rather than just putting it all on the district?
Yeah, I think that's something for us to talk about and take into account and
if you can get
see how we could do that. Right.
It's the other tricky part. You can get it.
But I think, I appreciate the questions that have come up, because I think that's one of our wonderings is this still meaningful enough for the community? And it's not even the what is offered, it becomes there are a lot of options for families, right, during the summer. And a lot of times families need full day opportunities for their children, or children go to camp, day camp, overnight camp. Classes that are run through some of these other organizations, and we've done, not for summer school, but we've done it in some after school programming in the past. I think of Chess Scholars as one that comes to mind. There's art, there are programs that do this kind of thing for a fee, right? And we could subcontract those, so again, is there a larger question? I think that's what I've been trying to listen for. Is there a larger question around
how meaningful summer school through your school district is for our families. And we do believe that the skill building is really valuable. That's by invitation. That's based on students, assessment scores. And then what we really like to do is pair it with something fun, right? So that you don't, even though I think our teachers do a great job making the reading and math support classes fun also.
That's what the survey said.
Yeah. Right.
They love it.
So this sort of leads to a larger question, because it's interesting. The course offerings were down quite a bit.
Yes.
And we didn't hear complaints. And it's unfortunate that I listen for complaints as the gauge, and I don't want to listen for complaints as the gauge, but there weren't families calling us saying, we got closed out, we didn't get into the class we wanted. So I'm trying to make sense of that, and it probably is a survey. I mean, one of the ways we would figure it out is through a survey.
For those students at the kindergarten through third level that maybe haven't reached some of their grade level standards of achievement, do we offer them anything in the way of skill building for summer school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's we kind of glossed over the skill building part, but probably just worth a few more words on that.
Skill building is invitation. It's by invitation, and we invite students who are tier 2 or tier 3 in the MTSS structure. So students who are receiving those small group or more individualized interventions, those students are invited to skill building classes. And we keep it to tier 2, tier 3 students because we're looking to make it a smaller size class so that we're having an impact on the student growth. And so there are some, there are families that have called and said, well, my kid's not receiving interventions, but they're not as high as I'd like them to be, or I think they should be. They're still tier 1, and so we don't have, they don't come to skill building because that will take away from the students who need that really focused learning. But that's where that math club one year that we had to have the math club for first, second, and third grade, that teacher had put that math club together for those students who still want to work on math, still want to be in a math class, but maybe weren't invited to skill building. And so that's where we hope we'll get teachers who might be able to catch those students that aren't receiving tier 2 and tier 3 services, but skill building is designed for small group instruction targeted to students who are receiving MTSS support.
Okay, that's super helpful. And then have we had any trouble staffing those classrooms?
No. We might not have someone volunteer right away in that first invitation, but when that happens, when we put out the second all call, we're short in this class or short in this area. I don't know how she does it, but Ms. Hefner manages to fill skill building with no problem.
Okay.
And that's sort of a must do or a need, and then
Yeah.
enrichment's kind of a nice to do.
Right.
But it's interesting, you were hearing from parents in the community, right? The ages with children similar to the ages of your children, I assume. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And I don't have the attendance of, you may have had 6 classes 4 or 5 years ago, but were they well populated with students, right? So I think too, I don't have a good sense really for, you hear these comments from the community sometimes, but you don't really know what the true demand is, right? When you put that on the schedule and you say we're offering this class, how many people are actually going to enroll in that, right?
So we don't host a class if it doesn't, for enrichment, if it doesn't have, I believe it's 6 is the minimum number.
Okay.
So we are looking for the classes to have a minimum. Otherwise, we do cancel it and let the 5 or less families know. I'm sorry, but we didn't have enough for enrollment. So they are populated with students. I don't have the attendance numbers for all the classes obviously on me right now, but that is something if you are interested in we can look at. But we don't host classes unless we have a certain number register.
Yeah.
Wasn't that number higher at one point? Was it higher?
It could be, and 6 might be the wrong number.
Okay, all right.
I think it's
there is a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember once we signed up for a class for my daughter
and it got canceled.
Canceled.
Yeah. 6 might be the wrong number.
Yeah.
And we'll keep a smaller number in the intervention support classes.
Yes, we do. And so if we start looking at in the winter data for the skill building classes, and if we see that a certain grade level is going to need 3 or 4 classes, that's where Ms. Hefner starts recruiting right away and trying to find more teachers so that we can keep those small numbers. We'll add classes before we cancel. We'll work to add classes before we cancel any of the skill building or make it large.
Any feedback around the timing? I know I haven't done summer school for the last, 2 years because we didn't have any the year before that. But when they were first grade, I think we did, and it was like 10 to 12 in the middle of the day or something. So like to your point on childcare, we made it work, but it was tough because we both work, and so trying to get them from the one place to that place, back to the other place, and then home, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't. Is there any feedback around
The
just a challenge?
satisfaction survey did ask about it. So first with timing, majority of us respondents do prefer the late summer dates over like June dates. We do ask that too to see, would you rather have it right when school ends or right before school begins? And most prefer right before school begins. Majority of families didn't have a lot to say about the 1 hour class, whether it's closer to lunch or closer to morning. But there were some respondents who did say, it's hard to find childcare for a 1 hour class.
Yeah.
And so if you're only taking one enrichment class and you're going from 9 to 10 or whatever that timing may be, we did have a few respondents that did say it's difficult with childcare arrangements to get them from one place to another. And kind of much like you just said, they'd say we made it work, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And like Parks and Rec is specifically at a different school because we're doing summer school at the other. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? I got two, but I'm waiting. Anybody else?
Well, I guess I'll note there was, my daughter participated in the summer school, and there was some initial scheduling difficulties with the earlier option. I think there was only, it was initially canceled, and I think my wife called back and we were able to get it reinstated, but I think they said there were only 2 kids in the early section. It was probably 9 to 10, but again, from a similar standpoint, that would have been really tough timing-wise for us to have made that work. If we had to go to the next class up, which I guess was 10 to 12.
Has there ever been thought of like condensing it into like my older son took the coding class the last 2 summers actually, but he only goes there then for an hour for over the 2 weeks. Has there ever been discussion about making it like a 1 week but more condensed, like 2 hours a day? Or
There has not been that discussion, but I'm not opposed to us having that conversation.
that might make it easier for like bringing kids back and forth.
Ready? It's not a hard one. On the empowered teams thing, you were talking about the 2-year process, which I can appreciate, get the teachers to understand what they're looking at, what they're doing with it, and then apply it to the student results. And I'm just curious to go another layer deeper on that. Is it like analyzing each student's individual results and what you do to manipulate that? Is it more of the classroom, or like how will that student-centered data piece be enacted in there for the teachers? I'm just kind of curious about that.
The answer to your question is yes. It is all of that.
Okay.
So when we're looking at the data and we're working with our staff members on how we look at data, it's looking at it from a large 25,000 foot view of this is what we see as a district, and then funneling down to this is what our school is seeing, then funneling down to how does your grade level play a role in what our school is seeing and where are their strengths and areas for growth, and then funneling down to what does my classroom look like in comparison to the others at my grade level, which is why you're looking as a team so that you're
That's
seeing
the collaboration piece
right,
going into it.
what's working in your room that I might be able to do differently so my kids understand this concept better.
Yep.
Or I taught geometry this way and they really got it. Do you want to know more about it? So having conversations about what's working in other classes. And then we do drill down to at your own classroom level to who are my students who are not grasping certain concepts and how many are in my class that might also and then looking at how many are in your class, and is there a way we can partner then to not both have to do greater hands make less work, so that we're not both teaching these small groups to these kids that aren't grasping a concept. Maybe we combine them during our win time and we're able to focus on more topics with different groups rather than Angela's teaching the same topics that Nora's teaching in her class next door. So it's just the funnel straight down.
Yeah, it's because we still have MTSS, so it's not getting as deep into the individual student needs on that spectrum, but that's a component of how is your classroom playing out, and then how do I compare to others in that grade too.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
And MTSS is looking at like our benchmark data, and then those students who are qualifying for tier 2 and tier 3, they're receiving supports based off of the data that we're taking in the fall, the winter, and the spring. So MAT testing, iReady Diagnostic, FastBridge, Fontes and Pinnell, they're receiving supports off of that, as well as what's happening in the classroom, but very much based off their benchmark assessments. Empowered Teams is looking at our common assessments based off of our curriculum. So how are we performing on our curricular assessments so that we can then use that data to drive our instruction in the classroom.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not expecting any of these teachers to be data analyst experts.
Right.
I mean, doing a lot of that myself, I still have a lot of people on my team that I'm like, this is how you read numbers, right? Like, not quite that basic, but like, data analytics is tricky, and you kind of need to know how to go through it. So we're starting that process so that they can really understand the data of their students, what it means, how it correlates. But they still have that district support through MTSS and your analysis and all the other things that are going on. All right, cool. My other one was on the pass surveys that we have. Does that feed into anything else other than just kind of getting a pulse of what our students feel like? Does that drive anything around like, hey, there's a spike here, do we need more support? Do we need...
It hasn't. We've just had the 1 year, just really as kind of a level setting here. I think when we have the results and are looking, and if we see trends that need attention, that would drive that support. So like if we saw there's, not to pick on Central, but since we're here, third graders at Central are really struggling with their sense of themselves as learners. What does that mean? What's happening in that transition to second to third grade? Kind of asking them the questions like, what is that root cause, and what supports do they need in response to that? So, I would say I might have more information to say about that in October, but in general, yeah, it is a pulse check for sure, and we want to see if there are any areas of concern. But then it's not just to note the area of concern, but then to determine what do we need to address that and kind of level those numbers out if there are peaks and valleys.
So is this more, I remember talking about this last year, I can't remember the details. So is this more about just like, is this just a sense of belonging at school? I feel like I should be here, I'm comfortable here, not like I feel anxious,
Exactly, yeah,
okay.
It's a little bit, it would never be used as like a diagnostic tool for depression or anxiety or anything like
so we're not going to
that.
see like, oh, we got a spike in anxiety or
It's more of, do I feel like I have a connection at school? Do I feel like I'm able to do the work at school? There are 9 factors, and I'm not going to be able to list all 9 of them, but it is definitely more of that kind of global sense of self as like, am I capable of doing what's being asked of me? And do I feel like there are supports around me if I'm, if I'm feeling like this is too hard, or if I'm feeling like school is hard? Is it because I think the work is hard, or because I don't feel like I am socially or socially supported, or like by the adults in the building?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's definitely more on that end versus I feel anxious about school, or I feel sad or upset, that kind of.
Yeah, okay. I saw the social workers and psychologists and I immediately went there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the, if somebody is across the board, reporting really bad feelings about everything, chances are if we looked deeper at that student, they might be having more global, it might not be only at school that they're feeling this level of kind of unease. So the social workers and psychologists are certainly going to be a part of kind of understanding what are these trends telling us. But
based on individual student needs, a pass screener may show you individual student
you can dive all the way down to individual student needs. It's more designed for identifying broader trends and looking at where we need to build in supports for subgroups, or students with IEPs who are feeling detached from their gen ed classroom because of how we're providing services, things like that. But you can dive all the way down and pull out individual student data to say like, yep, we're across the board struggling here. With last year, when we had just the first year of kind of getting just testing the validity of the data, those students who showed up with all elevated scores were students that were on our radar already for other reasons. So like that was kind of the purpose of last year, is to see like, is this is this kind of capturing the things that we already know about as one measure of whether or not it's a good tool.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm glad I asked the question, because it's a little bit different than what I was thinking. It's on the same course, but it's more in alignment with like the community building that you were talking about in here, and creating the comfort level first, because whatever you're coming in with, if you don't feel comfortable here, it's only going to exacerbate it. And so like I said, when I saw the social worker psychologist, I know I've talked to Martha a number of times about this, but like the mental health stuff is just like way up on my radar with my wife being in it and going through COVID, like we all did.
Absolutely.
I think the trend is, it's not that more people have issues. I think it's more understanding that there are issues out there that you can identify, right? So it's not like the population's getting more anxious. We just understand what it is. And so I'm just always on the lookout for that type of stuff, especially for the youngest kids that have no idea to tell you like what's going on with themselves, right? So
something feels bad right now.
Yeah.
And I think one of the goals of this is to help us look at what are the classroom practices that are supporting or thwarting those feelings, because we've got great mental health professionals in school, and a lot of students who access them for various reasons, but even students who might check in with a social worker every day or every other day, that's still only maybe 20 to 40 minutes of their week, whereas they're spending 7 or 8 at the elementary level, 7 hours a day in this community. And so what can we do looking at the practices in that setting to kind of improve those feelings for kids at school? But the psychs and social workers are a vital part of that too, of helping teachers to understand like, these are some things we could change, or these are some strategies we could try. So while it might not be direct service to students in terms of using this data to say, oh, we have 10 more kids on the social worker caseload, it is still getting a sense of what is the need in each building, and do we have the right resources to meet those needs.
All right, cool, thanks. Anybody else? No? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, let me get back to the agenda.
Facility advisory.
Facility advisory. All right, Joe. Facility advisories. You are up.
Thanks, Wesley. We met on the 17th, about a little more than 2 weeks ago now. The agenda's in the board book, but the highlights were Hollywood is finished. That was gutters and tuck pointing. We believe that we'll make that the exterior envelope, the outside walls of that, good for about another 20 years. There was no drawdown on the contingency amount, so that's really good. The butterflies are all good, which was something that was mentioned to the architects. Yes, that was discussed. I saw those go up, so I was especially. Hauser Auditorium, there was a little bit of a drawdown. There was a $50,000, I keep calling it contingency, that's not the exact right word, but allowance. There's a $28,000 drawdown out of the $50,000. All pretty much went all right, except that near the end, we've discovered that the existing wireless system is showing its age and probably does need to be replaced, and so that was discussed, and basically now we're going to investigate that, and some thoughts were given as to that using the allowance would certainly be acceptable, and then looking at some of our other capital allowances that were unspent would be there if we truly need it. So we haven't heard the end of that, but fixing the existing wireless in addition to the other work that was there. Blythe, everything was very close to finishing. I believe all the permits we had the occupancy inspection, and they were delivering for that. There were a number of minor punch list items, but I believe everything was opened up to
You opened on
Kismira's
time.
satisfaction, down to the very last minute.
Yeah. I believe it was 6 a.m. the morning of school
Was it
opening,
really?
but
Ramesh pushed them really hard,
Yeah.
and they still took the absolute maximum amount of time they have, but that's how these things tend to work, so none of this is a surprise. But they're still finishing up a couple
few
things.
punch list items. It's very functional, very usable. There's a projector that we're taking another look at in the music room and the library. It looks great. We're eager to have a meeting there. As you know, we changed our schedule around just
Yes,
to
that's
get
what
the
I was
punch list
thinking
items
of.
done. Yeah.
And then we also, finally, we talked extensively about Hauser Central. Central thoughts there. Sorry, I didn't do that on purpose. The primary thoughts there are that our schedule looks like bidding in November, awarding in January, and then notice to proceed in March. But with the amount of work that is going to be done, this work will extend into portions of the school year. So we've had some discussions about parking, because likely as not, the parking lot will not be completely available to staff. So there will be some discussions with the village and the neighbors about how to make that as palatable as possible, but everyone will have to have a certain amount of flexibility because the lot will not be available. And then also, we identified the fact that we will push for anything that involves, well, basically, the play areas, the playground would be prioritized, but the field will take some time to grow, so that may not be immediately available in the fall as well. And that's just how plants grow. And then, so that covers the main issues that we had. Then the agenda also identifies that there's some future items of interest that we will be looking at, including, we've discussed Hauser bathrooms, still have on our radar the Blythe Playground. We'll be having some extensive discussions about security, and that brings in, West 40 has a new group that will help us assess, and that group is made up of people who were tied to, or I forget what his name was.
Paul Tim.
Thank you,
Yes,
Paul
yeah.
Tim. I knew I was gonna get it wrong, so I didn't try. But that is something that you're exploring and scheduling. And then next, we'll be looking at tuck pointing at Ames and some other just continuing maintenance issues. Questions?
So I had a thought.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how many more large projects we're gonna be entertaining. I know with Open Meeting Act, it can be kind of difficult to bring involvement of other board members, but in terms of how the Blythe Park project worked out, at the end of things, I kind of felt like, gee, I wish I could have been a little bit more on the same page with what was going on with that project, or have a little bit more potential input, or I felt there were things that seeing at the end of the project, the end of the result, I felt like, gee, there were things that I could have shared if I would have had that opportunity to be a little bit more closer involved in that project, just because I have kids at that school. And just now where you're mentioning Hauser Auditorium, having had kids in Hauser Drama, it's definitely not a surprise to me that the wireless system is out of date. So I wonder, just, again, I don't know how many more large projects we have coming up along those lines, but I do think it might be a good thing to involve board members who have a connection to one school or another, to be able to provide a little bit more of that input.
And I was thinking about some of those thoughts as well, and to give the architects better guidance, I think we should try and figure that out. I don't have a simple answer.
I don't have a simple answer either. As I mentioned, Open Meeting Act kind of makes that a tad bit difficult. But I do think it would behoove, I think it would be better for the district and for the board to try to find a way to involve families or families in particular on the board with a school that's having a big project on.
Throwing out and taking that to heart,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily focusing on board parents, but
Perhaps, yeah.
additional presentations by the architects as they get to their plan development. The only thing I'm gonna say on that is I know that I've been to some of the, and I'm not, this isn't directed at you, but just in general, when we have had those presentations, those have been
Oh,
very
yeah,
lightly
it's definitely
attended,
sparsely attended.
except for the parent groups, the
Mhm.
PTAs and the PTA, PTO. But everyone's always been invited to those, but we need to make that better advertised, better communicated.
But I mean, I guess the thing is though too, a lot of the things that we've talked about in this, like in these meetings, I mean, I remember it specifically, so it came to me as no surprise either. Not so much because, you know, my kids were also in drama at Hauser, but I remember discussing specifically the wireless, and I remember us just specifically pulling that out, saying, yeah, we can get fine, but I'm like going, all right, but, so it doesn't come as a surprise to me that we're in this situation. But, so I guess, I mean, we should maybe dive deeper into it, but I think, right, at least from my perspective, I think the stuff that we discuss, I mean, it's pretty much, we discuss it, I mean, openly. Maybe we should just dive a little bit deeper in it, but.
I think some might argue we go too deep.
And I would argue that too.
That's
But,
why.
So maybe we're not going deep enough on the right things.
yeah, that could very be.
And that's why I'm pulling it out as, rather than a board level discussion, it becomes a school-based.
Yeah.
Because then it brings the specific users who have the most investment or most interest in the end results.
Yeah. I mean, I think to Dan's point, the Central Hauser thing's really kind of our last major expansion, at least that we have currently planned. But as other big things come up, it's probably something we could talk about. Could we put out like a parent blaster through the PTA, try to grab some volunteers or something like that? I'd hate to just tack on the PTA folks, because I know they put in a lot of work with the PTA stuff specifically. But maybe we could recruit.
Sorry, when I
3 or
mentioned
4.
PTA, those are the people who are always, it usually gets, the presentation becomes an element of their meeting. So
Yeah.
that's why it dovetails together really well.
Yeah.
That's
All the PTA meetings I've been to, which admittedly are not a ton, it's always the board. They have a bunch of board members, and so it's always just like a board meeting, basically.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly.
But we've,
So-
like with each facilities project, we've invited ourselves to those meetings
Yep.
or to a larger scale meeting. It's usually not much larger scale. And, I mean, I used the Blythe example. Actually, I believe it was a parent in the room that suggested that the current room that we are now using as the art room that was the library. They're like, why not this room as art? You know, because we were gonna do art and music downstairs together. So, as you know, there are a lot of iterations to all these projects. I mean, Central Hauser, I agree, is our next, sort of in terms of that master facility improvement. I see that as kind of the last item. There will be ongoing maintenance work certainly, and other projects may come up, but I think that one we've iterated a lot here in board meetings, so.
Yeah, for sure. We don't get a lot of audience members though, so I don't know. Your point's taken. I mean, I think just trying to figure out how to get the right feedback at the right time in the right place.
It is tough, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I guess then along those lines as well, and then perhaps along the lines of discussing it too much versus not enough. I guess there's one aspect as well that I felt was kind of left out of the documentation.
Yeah.
And that was in regards to the Blythe Gym. And it's definitely a very, very fine line in that resurfacing the gym floor, I don't think that's something that I need called out or say. I mean, in my mind, that's a maintenance item. But in particular, it was removing of the benches on the side was a removal of an amenity and something that wasn't as used as much during school hours But for things like, for aftercare or recreational basketball, rec league basketball on the weekends is something that was, and that in particular, if that had been called out a little more or spelled out a little bit more in the plans, that would have been, if nothing else, it would have put my antenna up.
But can I just sort of ask, I remember that coming up, wasn't that a mistake though?
The bench is coming out?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that, I will tell you how that decision was made, and it would have been in the construction specs, but I know the board doesn't look at it at that level. There were the goal was to make the gym as large and usable as the lunchroom. So that was sort of the philosophical principle that was discussed here, I know, was to make sure that the expansion of the gym, we would sort of use every square inch. And then I think the other conversation was that from like an injury perspective, kids have fallen, hit their heads against those benches, and so it's like, I think from principal and custodial and PE teachers, like, yeah, take them out. If that makes the gym bigger and remove something, I know that changes then seating for basketball games, and we have portable seating. We can make that seating happen. But yeah, I mean, never an intention to leave something off of our conversations, but I don't know that we have talked about anything at that level of granularity.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, Wesley, I know I'm probably going back and forth, but I do sometimes think we do get too much into the details, and I guess maybe it's more as a philosophical discussion as a board level. Do we want to get into those details? Because I know where I stand. It's like, and while those benches might have been nice, I don't want to necessarily get into the discussion of whether or not the benches are.
And, but that's why I'm saying that isn't a discussion at the board level.
Right.
That's a discussion at the school level with a presentation.
Right. Yeah.
Because that pulls it entirely out of the board really.
Or maybe I'm misinterpreting. I was actually thinking you were talking about bringing in, like, maybe not calling it an official committee.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
having somebody like be able to share ideas on a more ongoing basis rather than like one presentation where you might get an idea from 4 people, but more of an ongoing.
No, I thought of it as
thing.
probably kind of a deep dive with Joel, and bearing in mind this is not your paid gig, and I definitely appreciate your time on that. But I would have seen value with that level of minutia, perhaps, and again, having the kids there, being in and out of that school during times when school's not in session, having an idea about how some of those things are used as well. When there are, when it's not school time.
I think your point's valid, because when it comes to the benches, I probably would have done the same thing. Oh, that makes it bigger, take them out. But like, I'm not in that school. I don't experience the school the same way like somebody like you would be like, well, wait, we use these for these other things. Like, I would have no knowledge
I'm thinking
of that.
I'm thinking of my in-laws who are coming to those basketball games. I'm like, okay, I can stand for the games, but my in-laws, that might be a little tough. But,
Yeah.
And again, I'm glad to hear that there is portable seating that we can do it. It's probably an easy fix, but it's just something that I thought could have been a little bit better communicated to the board, or could have had a little bit input before after the fact, I guess. I guess the example that I had, that I gave myself anyway, is that I've got a contractor working on my house on things, and when I went into Blythe for open house the night before school opened, and I go into the gym, I'm like, whoa, what went on here? I didn't even know. When I'm like scanning my brain, did I miss something? Did we not talk about, or did we talk about this? And I totally blanked. And I had to go back home and go on board book and like trying to find this. Did we talk about this in this level? And I guess in comparison, in my own home project, if I would have come home and the contractors had done something that big that I had no idea that they were doing, I would have had a very serious discussion with that contractor. Well, that's just how I felt about it.
No, it's legitimate, Dan. There's not, and that's why I think pulling it towards the specific users and owners, stakeholders in the building is a better way to go. It's not, honestly, kind of like Wesley said, I don't know that I would have recognized the value of the benches without someone who's living in the building saying, well, this is what they're used for after school.
But what Martha said, though, it also sounded like there was a danger to it as well.
I can say this, it was between the contractor, Ramesh, Jim, like, I mean, in terms of the details around it, we were working on a goal of making the gym as large as possible, knowing that it was gonna be a gymnasium and the lunchroom. It's our only gymnasium, lunchroom in the school district. We weren't able to create another larger multi-purpose room as we did at the other schools, so I guess that's where I feel like our focus has been, is like, what is the goal? And so the removal of the benches, I don't know if it would have come to the board table, and I appreciate
It doesn't belong at the board table.
So,
But it does belong at
Well, it
a
belongs to the
stakeholder,
documentation.
it belongs at a stakeholder level,
Okay.
a user level, and that's
Well,
where.
I will go back specifically, I mean, there were plans that discussed what was being renovated at Blythe Park, and there were rooms in back of the gym that were highlighted as there were changes there.
Yeah.
The gym itself was left off. So at least that degree, I think, that yes, that room was part of the project overall as well, I guess. That I felt was kind of, it just wasn't attended, it wasn't left, it was left off.
It was not presented in some of the original architectural presentations, and that's where this discrepancy ends up happening, because you have one presentation, and we kind of talk very broad base when the architect does their concept level, saying we're gonna deal with the 2 back rooms and the kitchen and make sure we have that addressed, and then talk about downstairs, but then that level of detail about we're gonna do the gym floor. So doing the gym floor then leads to bench work, and that's plan development, and that's where that gets lost in a conversation. Or gets lost in a presentation, because the architects honestly are not used to having anyone, I'm picking my words deliberately, anyone in their space when they're doing that. Whether that's good or bad, I leave that for everyone to make their own assessment, because I have some strong opinions on that. But an additional presentation by the architect at some point might have been helpful. But again, user, not board table.
I'm gonna make one statement and then maybe move on.
Yeah.
I think your point is more about the gym and not the benches. Or is it really specifically about the benches? Or is it more of like, I was surprised because the gym was left off, not so much the benches were removed? Because the benches feel like a very detailed item, and the gym feels like much more of like a scope item.
No, honestly, I in my mind, the gym floor resurfacing is not something I would have gone, wow, I should have heard about this. In my mind, removing the benches was taking away an amenity that I wished I would have been able to say,
Gotcha.
oh, wait, okay, that, you guys, and totally valid, if it's a safety concern, absolutely we'll take them out, but just so you know, those are used for things that are outside of the classroom or outside of the school day that we might need to compensate for, and it sounds like we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's where I was going, Dan, I felt like I was thinking yours more about, I didn't recall a detailed conversation on the gym relative to the other details we got into with the other things. Because my thought was the benches probably, even if we had 3 or 4 people on a committee, I don't think Ramesh and you and what you just said, I don't think they would have gone back to ask for permission, because the goal was to make the gym as big as possible, right? So I think we still would have had a gap in the benches, but I think the primary thing I'm hearing from Dan though is just maybe having a couple extra sets of eyes of people that like live and breathe these buildings that might help us make better decisions.
That's what I'm agreeing with.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that that's where we want to go.
Yeah. So 20 years from now, when we do our, hopefully we don't have another $10 million project.
It seems like with the playground visioning for Central, it might give us an opportunity to get some a focus group or community feedback.
Well,
that's kids, I think.
That
isn't it?
was
Or
that
partially.
was. Sorry, I kind of skipped over that. That was done previously at Ames and at Hollywood. That kids and some parents were given some leeway to the kids, especially pick. Like 1 or 2 pieces of equipment where everything else was picked out, but here's 2 spaces. What would you like there? And that's how. I think we got I can't think of what it's called. The zip line. Good job, zip line.
Yeah.
That's zip line. But that's where that came from, is the kids had an opportunity to say, this is a really cool thing. And so they got that, and they got to vote, and there was a lot more participation. And then actually at Hollywood, there was a long discussion as well.
So we've done visioning for all the playgrounds, and we've done it for Central. I think at least 2 times with parents and with children. We're gonna do it again because that was way back, right, when the project was very sort of
early,
right. So your point's well taken. We have already set up a date with our architect to meet with kids. It's pretty easy to add it as a parent coffee. We did that with parents. Real honestly, the kids are the best at informing us what a playground should really look like. So, but yeah, it's a great point, and we are going to do an updated playground visioning because the kids that are here now, I don't know if they wouldn't remember it.
They wouldn't remember,
yeah.
but this gets back to, it's the users.
Yeah.
It's the people who want to and desire to use that space. Everybody else might have an opinion, but
And I hear what you're saying, Dan. You're saying, but I am a user of the Blythe Park Gym and Parks and Rec specifically, even though, the design was really around school lunch, school PE.
Oh,
classes,
absolutely, and
yeah.
that takes precedence, absolutely. I'm not arguing that at all. I'm kind of coming at it from two points of view, I guess. That I felt like, as a board member, I shouldn't be surprised to that great degree that there was all this work done that really wasn't in the plans. But then also, yeah, as a parent or as a board member who has a little bit more than a passing interest in these things, then I'm feeling like, well, I had some thoughts, some expertise, and some day-to-day use of this facility that I could have shared on this project or shared when it was being developed, or as some of these decisions are being made. And if that would have been highlighted, by the way, we're going to redo the gym, does it come up as a conversation of, oh, you're redoing the gym, what's happening with the benches? I don't know, probably not, but in my line of work, I guess we do this retros all the time with the idea that next time we do it, we'll do it a little better.
Yep.
So the thought is, and also if you can find a problem earlier in the process rather than later or at the end, it's generally better. So I'm coming at it from that aspect of things, of how do we find these little things that slip through the cracks a little bit earlier in the process.
That's, every project development, the earlier you hit it, the less expensive it is to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay. Any other questions or comments on facilities? Okay. Thank you, Joel. I will pass this over to Dave for finance.
So you see here, we have a fund transfer in here, and we'll let Jim talk a little bit more about that.
And you'll vote on it. We'll vote on it at the September 20th
Right,
meeting.
yes,
This is sort of just the draft of what the resolution would be.
So this resolution matches, it moves $3.8 million from the education fund to capital projects, which was approved really in the budget that we looked at last month. In August, it got approved. And there's some, as these projects wrap up, we'll need to write some checks at September 30th. So timing's right to move the money, and we'll have a balance in there as we keep working on the central project.
I guess that's the only question I have. It sounds like you've answered it. So this amount was planned and it's not changing, correct?
Correct. We were at 69%, and when we move this, we'll be at 56%. But I think that we'll add half of that back when we close the year out and the audit's done. So
Jim, 50% fund balance.
For operating, yeah. So the capital, you kind of set aside for things that aren't an annual cost. Otherwise, when you're comparing years, they'll vary quite a lot. That's how we've been doing, is with working our fund balance down as we pay for all these capital projects.
Questions?
Any questions?
Thought that'd be a pretty straightforward one.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dave. We don't have anything listed under policy or personnel, but I'll throw it out there. Is there either of those toes kind of catching both?
Just under policy, just kind of sitting and waiting for the next press update in the fall to come out. I don't know when that will be, but I presume soon-ish. Just one thing to mention is at the last meeting when we went through the intergovernmental agreements, I know that we had a policy that just kind of lists those in a more evergreen format, and there is one that is missing. So Martha and I just talked about, I think we talked about just bringing it at a future, like whenever we do other press updates, bringing it then just to get it cleaned up so that it accurately reflects all of the IGAs that we are a part of in the relevant policy, just to ensure that it's consistent. But I don't think it's something we need to take action on now, or we can wait until we get the next press update and then put it as part of that discussion.
And it was just the update that it lists like Riverside Parks and Recreation, Village of Brookfield Parks and Recreation, but it doesn't specifically say Village of Riverside. So
which is our crossing guard.
Right,
with
right.
Riverside. It lists the police, right? It lists the Parks and Rec. But
Yeah.
it didn't list just the village. So it's minor, but you know, we want it to be accurately reflective of the IGs that we have in place. Embedded into our policies.
It's large and it doesn't really change the substance a lot, so but we should fix it.
Just more of a, I think I mentioned that out loud in the last meeting, so I'm circling back. That's it. So we'll just wait to see what comes down the pipeline with press.
Okay.
In terms of personnel, the steering committee for personnel has yet to meet this school year. I believe we have a meeting scheduled for later, towards the end of this month. I guess as we approach, we'll see if we have something to discuss.
And I do have a few items already, so.
Fantastic.
We'll plan to have that meeting. I was gonna reach
We will
out.
plan to have that meeting then.
Canceled more than we've had, so yeah.
You usually always have something. Something's always going on. Okay. Don't see anybody here for public comment. Do we have any?
No.
Okay. So then the future meeting dates, we got the next regular board business meeting, September 20th in the Hauser Learning Resource Center at 7 p.m. We have the October 4th Committee of the Whole meeting at
Hollywood. So we kind of redid the whole rotation
Okay.
when we took Blythe off.
Okay, all right. I was thinking we were going back to Blythe.
Right, so
Okay.
if you put it on your calendar early, recheck your locations.
All right. So the October 4th Committee of the Whole at Hollywood, and then the October 18th regular business meeting, 7 p.m. Hauser Learning Resource Center. And with that, we do not need to go back into closed session. So with that, the meeting is adjourned.